Hey, what's up? I'm just tapping in with the video, and I had a few ideas that were kind of building on some content that I made recently, and I was saying that one of the bounties of expressing ourselves is that anything we say, do, or think is it's truly creative as it's coming like from our true like interest in creativity, and that anything that's really coming from who and what you are is it hasn't, you could say it maybe hasn't existed the way that it does coming from you, because no one has had yet the experience that you have had, are having, and will have. So it's truly creative, our ideas that we express, but they're not independent of other people, but they're really living. So I had some clarifying thoughts about some content that I made specifically about like class, and then classiness, and then also about like technology. And I'm gonna put another video. It's gonna be like a short video. It kind of cut out, but it was a little bit of testimony about like where I'm coming from with like my experience of technology. And I just wanted to share it because I think some of the testimony might have been unique in there, but I'm gonna try to take back up what I had said there, and like finish it out. And one is that in like a video one or two back, I was talking about some of my experience about witnessing the unfolding and the unleashing of like new iterations of technology that would change society. And we're in the process of changing society as I experienced them, but as a child, to really experience the real the real the internet age take form in like the digital space. And I was saying in that video is that you can maybe appreciate me as like truly a child of the 90s. I'm a 80s baby, but a child in the 90s. If you can appreciate that I was born 1 month before 1986, and I turned 18 1 month before 2003. So my childhood was, so if a childhood is 18 years, and you break that down, the last 4 years of the 80s were my childhood, 10 years of the 90s, and then the first 4 years of the 2000s, give or take 1 month. So my childhood couldn't have been any more squarely upon the 90s. Not my being born, but my childhood. So that doesn't make me more or less of a 90s baby, but it just shows you my standpoint of witnessing a lot of shifting take place, where even if you're a young person now, like even anyone watching this that's old enough to like understand the type of stuff I'm talking about, or like what technology is, has already experienced just about as much upheaval, for better or worse, but just change in the last 5, 10, 15, 20 years, as much as me living for the last 5 to 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40 years. I sound old saying that like that, but when I was born in the 80s, you already had a lot of like electronic stuff, because electronics were well underway by the 80s, and for many generations, like back in like World War II, they already had like radar and radio communication. And then they likely would have been more sophisticated technology before it proliferated in the public, because it's appreciated that a lot of times technology exists several iterations beyond what's available commercially, because there'd be an interest in concealing some of the advantage of some technology. But a lot of technology, even the technology we have, the actual principles of them and the mechanics are not entirely new. Some people, such as Taj Bey, have said that we've actually had a lot of technology as human beings going way back beyond what we're taught in popular culture, such that like areas like, according to him, like areas like the Grand Canyon in the United States, some of the actual artifacts of older iterations of technology would be present there. Like in some of the there's more to the caverns of the Grand Canyon than is popularly appreciated, according to Tashreeq Bey. Also, like to him, when you would see, like, say they do sometimes you wonder like how people fared in the conditions back in the day. Like I grew up in New Mexico, and you would have like an area called the Four Corners. I think that's where like Colorado, Arizona, New Mexico, and maybe is it? Yeah, I'm kind of bogus for this. Utah or Wyoming. No, is it Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona? and the one that's above Arizona and to the side of Colorado. They exactly converge. But then also you have places called like Sky City, which was like, it was like a city, an ancient city, Native American dwelling, up on a like a cliff face, like on a plateau, elevated plateau like cliff, and it's called Sky City. Then you also had a place called Acoma. I'm not sure if Acoma is the same as Sky City. Then you also had a place called like Pueblo. So you would have like these dwellings where the remains of these homesteads would be built into the adobe like clay homesteads there. Some of the actual architecture of the Southwest is reminiscent of that. Like where I grew up in an apartment complex, but the actual, it was like tan buildings, and they actually somewhat resembled the adobe aesthetic of like fashioning homesteads out of adobe. But there's some actual mystery about some of those civilizations, because it's not agreed upon how they actually came in. Some of them they disappeared, and people don't know the real history of that. And to get the real history, you might have to actually talk to people of that heritage. There's a channel called Navajo Elder Teachings, and he speaks to some of the history of that. According to him, some of your Dene people, there's I think the Spanish appropriation of that name is Navajo, but the name is Dene according to this elder. But that had been like a something of a like almost like a refugee type of tribe, where they assimilated a lot of they were welcoming and assimilating a lot of people from abroad. So they would be like genetically, ethnically, and culturally diverse. The Dene people, according to that man, from how they were composed. I think the Zulu people like that in Africa would be similar, where Zulu were a warring people led by Shaka. They had some innovations in warfare, such as, I think in Africa back in the day, a lot of warriors wore sandals, but Shaka would train his men without footwear, and it would toughen their feet and somewhat make them more dynamic and less limited in battle. They also did like strategy around like water, procuring, concealing water sources, and then managing water supply during fighting. And then also, like, and a lot of times back in Africa, they would have these long spears, but then the Zulu, they made it like a half spear. It's like a sturdier stock and like maybe a broader blade, and it's called an azegai. And so while other people would be concerned with like longer sticks in the older iterations, they would have these azegai, and then an efficient shield, and they would get in close and be more deadly. So those might not sound profound on themselves, those three, but then you part those in combination, and that's lethal, formidable, and horrible to an opposition. But the Zulu, I think, they didn't entirely decimate their foes. They would assimilate them, almost like similar to, I imagine maybe the Roman Empire would incorporate, maybe your great empires, some of the real great people of the earth. They incorporate they incorporate more than just outright decimate. I think that might have been true of the. I'm being very blunt and crude with this, and this is not actually. I'm not actually speaking factual with this last point. That I would imagine the Huns of Asia, the Roman Empire, they may have done something similar with assimilating other people. But I know that the Zulu did that, according to my father, who isn't a historian. And then also the Dene were like that. But I'm not saying the Dene had a military component necessarily of assimilating people, but they would assimilate people. But that would be some of the history about how some of these people actually came into and ceased to appear. But when you look at these, like the structures of the Native Americans, you know, the Southwest is really rugged. Like you can go. I went through the Southwest recently on a brand new motorcycle and had a job when I left town. By the time I got to my destination, I was beat to hell. I didn't have a job, and I barely got there by the skin of my teeth and prayers and grace of family. I wouldn't have got there without the skin of my teeth, prayers, grace from family, mercies, and then actually I had some traveling mercies, like someone actually lifted a motorcycle up. I pulled over on the. So sometimes you have to really. I think that each region of the globe, it has certain folklore that's endemic to that region, and you are really from that region when you know what that folklore is about. For me, in the northern, like in Minnesota, that's about like Paul Bunyan, Timberwolves, and Paul Bunyan, Timberwolves, and maybe Bigfoot, but Bigfoot would be all places, but at least Paul Bunyan and Timberwolves. If you are really from here, you have some experience at least once of something to do with Timberwolves, You can say something unique about Timberwolves, whether you live in or out of a city, and you also have something to say about Paul Bunyan. I found out that Paul Bunyan's not as tall as you thought. He's big guy, but not as tall as you thought. But you don't actually meet him where you're from. You meet him where you need him. So I was actually north. I was actually near the Grand Canyon, like in the coming into Phoenix area, and it's some steep, unforgiving mountains coming into Phoenix where you're on the road. The road is at all different angles. There's a shoulder of the road, but there's no exit. So you're navigating these curves. You can pull over for a moment if you have to, but you're on the side of the road and you don't have much of a shoulder, so it's only so long as you stay there. But I pulled over and I was very exhausted from traveling for several days without sleep, rest but not sleep. And then I actually tipped a motorcycle over on myself, because one of the dangerous thing about motorcycles is that they're really heavy and you can tip them over on yourself, especially if you're new and you're not versed in that. You may know how to ride you grew up riding bikes, you can ride a motorcycle from that standpoint, but you don't know the nuances, and things can go wrong with a motorcycle that's different than a bike, such as the weight. But the bike I was riding, it has like a higher center of gravity. So because of that, when you're doing when you're going like at highway speed, like which can be up to 80 miles an hour in a lot of areas, and then you're having these curves on the highway like that, it's not much of a problem with that motorcycle the way it's designed, and you can feel yourself, and actually you can have some of the skill of a more versed rider because of the engineering of that bike. But if you pull over, it can also tip over easier because the center of gravity is higher like that. So I actually tipped a motorcycle over on myself a couple times in one night, but especially in the like coming into Phoenix, the Grand Canyon area. And this guy was driving by, and he pulled the hell over because he saw someone. It looked like someone wiped out on a motorcycle. It looked bad because I had this motorcycle, but actually the motorcycle is also designed such that even as it tips over on you, it doesn't crush your leg, because there's somehow something about the way it's made that there's a little bit of a peg that sticks out, so it's forgiving that it won't completely crush you, but it is on you, but it won't crush you like that. So I fell over and it looked really bad, but it actually wasn't as bad as it looked like. But he pulled over and he was like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "Oh no, it tipped. I tipped. I didn't crash." He's like, "Okay." And then he's like, "What can I do for you? Can I help you?" And then I was like, "Yeah, if I can just get the bike up, I should be okay." He's like, "Oh, this thing?" And so it's a big bike. It's not the heaviest of motorcycles. It's a little bit lighter than other motorcycles. And I'm a newer rider, which is why I was recommended that bike. But he lifted that thing up like nothing. I can lift that thing up, but it takes all of my might, and it takes a struggle for me to lift it up by myself. But I can with all my might. But that man lifted it up like nothing, and he was sturdy. He looked like Paul Bunyan, but just a little bit shorter, big, tall, but not super tall like Paul Bunyan, but just big like that. He's like, "Are you okay? You good?" Because he was actually an EMT on his time off, like with his like with a cool girlfriend, and he just pulled over and lifted the thing the hell off of me like that. But I actually want to say that's actually, I wanted to say, make a stand for mercy with that, because when you are doing something like I was leaving like leaving a troubled and a deprivated personal, social, professional scene, like where I'm coming from, the area. I know a lot of the area like the back of my hand, and I was telling people if I had I know the area better than if there were a tattoo on my hand. But if I had it my way, I'd also get that tattoo removed, because there's not much that I miss about this area. A lot of my deepest connections to this area are experiences that I had with myself. Sometimes I miss energy from different points in my life, but I don't have a lot of real experiences that I miss. Like if I were to move the hell away from here, I don't have like a lot of memories or like a place that's gonna make me think of a memory. I just think of a phase in my life, like some of the love I was having for other people, prayer I was having from other people, maybe also from other people, like some cool experiences, like that would be unique, but nothing of like missing like a lot of like except for things that like I served some elderly people in their home, and like we'd watch like a lot of like we'd watch things like what's that show? The show with Sheldon. It's a show with all the nerds, and like Sheldon is on there. Not the show of him as a child, but the original show. I can't think of that name off the top of my head, but that's kind of like where I got some of my ideas about dressing, because they always had like these really cool nerdy outfits. But it made me think like, dang, I need to start putting together some outfits so I can bump into these ladies where I live at in my mom's apartment, and I can look cool like when I'm doing laundry and stuff like that. That's what my thought process was back at that time. But then That person I was working with, she thought those shows were dumb, but like she would like tolerate me having them on, and then we just like watch a lot of TV, and then I cook her dinner. But then also she had like this music channel, and we'd just like listen to music like just for like hours like that. She'd be like reading like Reddit, like doing her thing, and I'd just be like sitting there killing time, getting paid for it. Like listening to music, like cool music, like from the '80s, like that song New Shoes. It's like a song by New Shoes, like you got to how's the song like we can it's like I can't remember the lyrics, but it's like some of those songs are almost spiritual. Some of those pop songs, even Madonna songs, if you just think about the energy and the standpoint that they're coming from, but also what you had going on in life when you were listening to that, and then the way that things are connected like that. Some of your actual pop songs, they're actually kind of spiritual like that, in that they're a part of the human experience, and then they resonate with the human experience and the different things that we had going on for ourselves and towards one another as we experience some of this music. But those are some of the things that I miss about this area, and like some of the energy that I had going on in my life at these points. But based on like my inclination and alignment in life, but I don't have like a lot of, I'm getting off, you almost hear the sad violin. My point is that I was coming from a bad situation, not a good situation, when I was having a reason to get out of town on a motorcycle and be extended enough to tip over on myself. But then here go this man, sturdy, well put together, and he showed me mercy like that, a traveling mercy, a grace, a blessing, a lifeline. But you can imagine that person, he might have had a military background, or he might remind you of like a military type person, how sturdy and well put together he was. Now, what if I was from another country or another political alignment where I was also honest there, or I was attempting to be honest, but I got extended like that, and then I meet someone that sturdy, well put together, strong, formidable, and then rather than save my life, they finished my life right there, because that's what the baseball had been. That shows you how horrible war is, but also how redeeming life is in manhood, is womanhood, and humankind is when we're kind. What I meant to say is that going back, so in the 80s, so I was a child of the 90s, but I saw different things come on the scene, and I made a couple of statements that I wanted to clarify about witnessing some iterations of technology. So in the 80s, you had like a lot of that's almost another topic. I think I'm gonna leave that alone. That changed the tenor of this video, so I'll just leave this video there. But the other thing I wanted to say is that I was making the video about class and classiness, and what I've appreciated is that I was thinking about that. So the most classy person I've encountered before, if I had to count one person that I've met in life, hands down the classiest person, it would be this classmate of mine who I encountered at a well established musical school, a well renowned musical school I was attending, and this man was there with me, but he was in the process of matriculating and transferring to Harvard to study psychology at Harvard. I encountered him in a poetry class, a class that actually broke down poetry. There's some things about poetry that are not, some techniques that are, they exist within poetry, but someone hasn't like organized some of the principles of it that are present there. And there's an actual brilliant man, his name is Pat Pattison. He's actually from where I'm from, St. Paul, but he traveled and migrated. He's eminent within songwriting. He's renowned among songwriters, and then also he's curated and researched and made available different material that's very potent for songwriters. He has a book on rhyming, like rhyme schemes. He has a book on better songwriting, and then he has books on songwriting itself. But then also he has material about poetry. If you look up Pat Pattison, Pattison, but then also he's like a faculty head, and also has designed curriculum for Berklee College of Music. A lot of I won't like a lot of it is like proprietary knowledge, like that he fashions in their school, which is that some of that curriculum, you would have to encounter that. I'm not promoting that school, but you'd have to encounter that school, the curriculum there, which they somewhat is like proprietary content. but then but that's from him the fact that his standing at that school and his relationship there. But then also he also has books available for public purchase that contain similar ideas and some of the content that would be available in the class, and some of his books are actually part of the curriculum, but the curriculum is a little bit different than the books. But either way, if you looked up Pat Pattison and just that on Google or anywhere else, you could find some of his content. I think he also has content on some of your those like Coursera, like your those college courses that you can purchase as a civilian or a non-traditional student or young person. But he also so that's Pat Pattison. But there's some, we were learning about poetry in that class, and this other student, he was an excellent student, and he really mastered that material, and he was diligent in working through that material. He was stand out as a colleague and as another student, and he wasn't showing off, but he was just pleasant to be around, and he was a valuable addition to that classroom and the work, and then also the feedback that he would give to other students and the examples of his work. But when we would get into these landing zones for like the group classes, the group conferences, he would be very, very comfortable small talking. Like he could small talk for the sake of small talk, and he wasn't trifling about it. He wasn't schmoozing about it. He wasn't like saying not. He was actually, you can actually learn a lot, experience a lot of another person by just talking about whatsoever comes into your mind as you're being pleasant and somewhat informal, but also not having a big background with someone. But inevitably, in a situation like that, someone will want to get to business. Like, and I was like that way at that time before meeting that man. Hi. But what about the classwork? But let's get to business. When it did come down to business, he handled business with the best of them, and he handled his business. But when we were meeting there, he appreciated people as people. He simply respected himself, and he respected other people enough to feel comfortable expressing himself and listening to other people and experiencing other people and being experienced by them as primary, life as primary, living as primary, people as primary, respect as primary. Then we get on to the business. And so I was thinking that, like, sometimes I think that's a lot. So what I meant to say is that I think that what is class, what is pretentious, what is ignorant, what is noble, what is ignoble, what is efficient, what is superfluous, what is verbose, all this stuff. It can be arbitrary and contendable and contestable, and it largely is. But I think that if I had to designate the truest expression and mannerism and that betrays, that means like it reveals your actual true class, that's your true experience of life, but also your tact and care within that, like your respect within that for yourself and others. The greatest, for me, the greatest indication of class and class itself is patience. Because if you are patient, that's to me, that's the greatest class. Because like some people, I think that, like I've said, in the United States, we have a little bit ambivalence about what class is. Like a lot of class in the United States, it comes down to money. But deeper than that, it comes down to brutality, that is power. My way or the highway is what is power, but also brutal, but also it flies as class. So like, say you have someone that say, like, people think that it's cool not to talk, like it's cool to be silent. That's called taciturn. That's like an aesthetic now. That is, I've seen it become more popular like in the last 5-10 years. But it was always like, a lot of people always rocked with that, but it really became just like move in silence, stuff like that. Now back in the day, real ones moved in silence, but it wasn't pop culture to say something like move in silence back in the day. But I think some of it is because we've actually got more robotic, and then we can post online, we can express ourselves online. So there must be supply and demand, there must be economy, because if anything can say anything, if anyone can say anything and anything goes, then talking loses its value. So you need more demand, so you need more shut upness, so that words can have value. But ostensibly online, I can get on a video and talk for this many days in a row, and I can talk for 5 days in a row and upload a video like that. And that it'd be funny if that glitched out YouTube, but you could say that might fly. Or you could write anything long and that would fly, and it's not really costing anything but just ones and zeros in a server somewhere. But people wouldn't appreciate that because you need to move with the times to have value. So we say that we don't want people to talk too much, but actually we still want to have value for our words. So we must control the flow of words. So this is how many words people get to say now. And that's what's cool and what's not cool. But that's also keeping words valuable. So it's supply and demand. Because if it were that cool not to talk, no one would have nothing to say, never, no how, no when. And I don't think that's most people's standpoint. It's let's only talk. Let's make talking more valuable by censoring people that would want to talk. But what I meant to say is that so you can have someone that's very silent, but they're also frustrated easily. Like they're quick. They have a temper, so they're quiet, but they have a temper, and you can feel that they're hot, and they'll flip off the handle. So that's actually not patient. So you would appreciate them as having class for being silent, but it's actually not class in that they're not patient, and that they can actually mismanage a situation, mismanage power, injure themselves and others. That's actually not savvy or clever or classy, but patience is. So if you're quiet out of patience, but then you're also patient when things are going awry, now when you speak, now that's having weight because you're quiet and patient, not quiet and impatient. That's a little bit like petulant. That's almost still childish. To be kind of like you got a kid that's mad. They're not talking to anyone, but they're still impatient. So that you wouldn't say they're classy. They're not talking, but they're not classy. But you got this one. So imagine you have two kids, right? And like they're getting in a fight, and one of them's like, and the other one's like. Which one do you got to worry about hurting the other one? I'd be more worried about the one that's patient. So what I meant to say is that I think that for all things, patience would be the highest indication of class. So for that man to be comfortable small talking, patient enough to small talk, because a lot of people, they can't small talk because they're not patient enough for it. They're chomping at the bit to get onto the business. But that standpoint, you may not be as effective because if you rush into anything, you likely mess it up. So the better standpoint to get into something is to be patient going into it and let it come about naturally. And so I think that's a lot of what class is being patient and let things come about naturally. So we're meeting each other, we're being ourselves, we're expressing ourselves. The first thing that comes to our mind, it might be the weather, it might be what we just got in from, this and that. We're gonna get around to the business because it's gonna come down to that. Even if we were to talk forever, our conversation is at some point gonna get down to what we came there for. It will do that. If we're there if that's our purpose for being somewhere, the conversation will reveal the purpose. But to rush into it for its own sake, or to mock or disrespect someone else for being themselves, that's not classy. But I just want to say that's actually very like masculine, is to be yourself, be comfortable with yourself, and let things transpire as they will as you're being yourself. You could also say that that'd be like similar like with romance. So like a lot of people, they try to gain leverage like in romance. There's a lot of content that proliferates about romance, like what is romantic etiquette, how do you respond to someone when texting, how do you maintain the standpoint of leadership in a relationship, or the type of dynamic that would give you leverage but also make you attractive and viable. How do you do that? And then for me, how do you do that without being fake? But some people just say, how do you do that? And then what is masculine and feminine about that? I think that if you were really having like a real romantic dynamic like Romeo and Juliet, I think that the real dynamic of two people who are in love but are completely in their element is that so I listened to something interesting once on an adult film that might sound strange, but a lot of times like they have like adult this and that, and you actually wouldn't really be interested in what they're saying. Like a lot way back in the day, like adult stuff was kind of different. Like they would have like these kind of scenes, and it's like kind of very like put together, but it's also kind of attractive for how put together it is, and kind of dark for being scripted like that. But it's like more fancy and like more of like a plot line and story. But nowadays it's just like they just get down to the business, just like life is like straight to business now. But every once in a while, like you actually wonder like what they're actually saying, because they still do talk in like adult stuff. And this one guy was asking this woman, like he was actually they were like, it was like an adult scene. And I don't mean to be vulgar with this or profane by putting this content on YouTube referencing an adult film, but I'm just saying is actually interesting what the person said. He was talking to a woman and he said, so he was asking her about her background. And then he said that she was talking about, I think she'd had different relationships with like people of her same gender and people of different gender. And when he was talking about like these relationships he had, I think he was talking about like the same gender relationship. And he was asking, but how do you actually determine like the dynamic in the relationship, like who's leading, who's following, like how do you actually establish that? He asked that. That's like colder than like trying to be suave or smooth or do all the like little cute like programming stuff, like programming one another and putting these preconceived moves on people, is actually just asking questions. That's actually the coldest, devious, but also that's the, I think that the deepest turn on is actually a well placed and timed question, because questions open you up. They make you more of who you are. So the deeper thing to do would just be to ask a question. He said, but how do you actually establish like the dynamic in your relationship? And I don't know exactly what her response is, but I think that what would make, like, between two people that are attracted to, say you have two people that are attracted to each other and they're enjoying each other's company, and you're getting to the point where naturally, organically, you're about to like have an experience together. You're not forcing it, but it's available. So in India, they say that when a fruit is ripe, according to Arthur Avalon, when a fruit is ripe, it falls off the tree by its own accord. So you don't got to go climbing way up a tree to pluck a fruit. And if you did that, you put yourself in danger, and you also may have plucked it untimely, so it's not actually ripe in its greatest benefit and enjoyment. But if it's really designated for you, that is like upon timing, it'll present itself. It'll fall right off the tree near about into your lap. So I think some of our experiences are like that too. Like where if an experience is really for you, like whether like dating or friendship or professional or whatnot, it more so presents itself to you, and it's not difficult, if at all, to access and experience that experience. Now, what it would take for you to become the person you are and to be in the position and in the vicinity to have an experience that's for you, that might be what the work is. But the actual experience itself, it somewhat transpires and it's already in effect before it takes place. According to Arthur Avalon, things happen in the spirit, then they happen like in the alignment of like the planets, the time of day, which is also the planets like the sun, the seasons, and then the cadence of our life. That's our timing. So it goes from spiritual to cosmic to terrestrial, and our body's terrestrial, part of the earth. So it happens in the spirit, then the alignment like of day and night, but then the deeper cycles of the actual planets, but then it happens on the earth. But it had already transpired deeper on the spirit realm, and time exists differently. Temporal reality is more so cosmic and terrestrial than spiritual, because spiritual is like eternal, and it's a different mode of existence than what we'd appreciate either cyclically or linearly in cosmic or terrestrial. But a lot of our experiences are already at play. So if you were having a beautiful experience with someone, and you're having an opportunity and you're feeling the moment, which one would be the leader and the follower would actually be the one that's more eager. So you could say that, so they say that in any relationship, there's the one that kisses and the one that's kissed. That means that you always have a little bit of dynamic of push and pull, give and take, and like the leverage, the ability to walk away from a situation to say no. That's part of the actual power that lends itself to being attractive and viable to other people. So you could say from that standpoint, one always exactly and almost necessarily likes the other a little bit more than the other one does. If two people liked each other the exact same and they both knew it, there might not be as much of a game. And it's even like animals like birds and like maybe even insects and other creatures, they somewhat court. And like you see squirrels chasing each other, and they're actually courting each other. But it's some of that dynamic of that. You need a little bit of push, pull, running, chasing, kissing, and being kissed to really have the dynamic. Like there'd be this place, like I made a video on this channel way back where I had like a blue T-shirt on, and I was waiting for a run in a job, and in this area they had like they had like these trees that were way up there, and they had these two branches that exactly adjoined over the street way up there, but there was a good gap up there, and these squirrels would jump over that like nothing. Now, I've never seen a squirrel fall from that height, but you could imagine a squirrel could get hurt falling that high onto the cement. But these squirrels would jump that, and I was like, dang, the first time I saw that. Then I saw it again, dang. Then again, then another one was chasing one, like as though like dating. But the squirrels in that area, I guess all of them, they exactly jumped at that point, and they didn't think nothing of it, but it was way up there, and it's crazy. But squirrels chase one another like that. So you could say that in a dynamic, in two people that are enjoying each other's company, for two people to be kissing, one has to initiate the kiss, lean into the kiss, want the kiss a little bit more. And from that standpoint, I think that might actually be the follower, is that the one that's more interested, more eager, is actually the follower. So in the dynamic, if there's a leader and a follower in any dancing, it might be exactly the one that wants more, that's eager more. So you could say that if two people are really in love, if a woman is really in love, because like there's a YouTuber named Rollo Tomasi, and he said that if a woman really is attracted to you, like she's really into you, wanting you, there's no distance of plane trip she won't take. There's no road trip. There's no barbed wire she won't crawl under. There's no prison she won't breach you out of to experience you. If she's into you, that's a woman, according to Rollo Tomasi. So if you haven't had a woman crawl under barbed wire or get you out of barbed wire before, maybe you've never had a woman on your hands before. But I'm being a jerk with that, because I damn sure haven't had a woman crawl under barbed wire, but yet. but so that might actually be what's feminine and not in a relationship. So you can appreciate that. Yes, anatomically we're male and female, but we have masculine and feminine leaning propensities, and maybe we have more liberty to lean into one more or express one more in the modern iteration. So you could say all of us are somewhat masculine and feminine, and somewhat wear the pants and don't wear the pants in relationships now, both males and females, whatever, like however you identify any type of lifestyle or orientation. You could say at sometimes you more so or less so wear the pants when you're attracted to another person, depending on who's more or less attracted to the other one. But the dynamic of leader, follower, push, pull, masculine, feminine, that might be the more arbitrary thing I said, masculine, feminine. It's just which one is more eager, which one is more attracted. Maybe in the greatest sense, like what a lot of people fancy and look for, male and female, would be a female that's more interested in the male than the male, to have like the true aesthetic. But I might be just getting off into the weeds with that, and I don't want to compromise this channel by talking about stuff that I'm not versed in. But I just want to say that I appreciate that class is in patience, and then also like maybe the dynamic in a relationship is also in patience and easiness, and letting things transpire organically, and being comfortable with things taking their course organically is the actual most adult, mature bearing and standpoint for a relationship, and just in life, is to be exactly ourselves, patient while being ourselves, and let situations transpire. Business engagements, romantic engagements, educational engagements, be ourselves coming into it, and the whole time, and let it take form organically, and not be over eager for anything. I think in the Holy Bible it said be impatient for nothing, or be eager for nothing. That's also true in our relationship. So you can maybe summarize all the content that proliferates on YouTube about dating is be yourself, be patient, and be eager for nothing. That's let things take their form on the broad scale, but also in a situation, on a date, in life, in a venue. Let things exactly take course, and don't rush anything, and don't prevent yourself or other people from being themselves. And that's class par excellence. That's being yourself is the greatest class, and the seasoning on that, or the bow tie on that, is to be patient, and then and enjoy what's yours to be had as it transpires organically. And that might be what class is right there. And I learned that from being around a Harvard man that was comfortable with small talk, but also he cleaned up nice around like schoolwork too, and I would imagine professional work too. So I hope this can be of value to someone. And I don't mean this with no smugness, or like speaking from like outside of my experience or nothing like that, but just some insight that I thought, and just food for thought. That's all I meant. Peace.